Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Good afternoon to our outstations. Welcome to the Chaplain Corps Campaign Council for 28 January 2019. Today as we begin, this is the feast of St. Thomas Aquinas in the Roman Catholic Church. And so we will begin just a little thought on St. Thomas. So St. Thomas had this, he believed firmly in who he was, in the role that the church played, and he did that so that he might understand. And so we believe that we might understand. So today as we engage on this council, we might reflect about that in this way. As chaplains, as religious professionals, as religious affairs specialists, we have to believe in what it is that we're doing so that we might understand the undertakings that we are about in the Corps. And that we might then have a deeper identity, a deeper calling to serve God, country, and others. And that then leads us so that once we have understanding, in light of how Thomas crafted his wonderful Summa, which he regretted ever writing when it was all said and done, for it was all dust, that we understand so that we might truly love. We might truly love God, we might truly love one another, we might truly love what God has called us to do. So I want to just take a moment as we gather to offer perhaps a brief prayer here in some of the words of Aquinas that are taken from his prayer that we prayed every day where I went to seminary, St. Thomas, University of St. Thomas, St. Paul Seminary. We pray this before every class. It's his prayer of understanding. And it goes, "Come, O Holy Spirit, divine Creator, true source of light and fountain of wisdom, pour forth your brilliance upon my dense intellect. Dissipate the darkness which covers me, that of sin and ignorance. Grant me a penetrating mind to understand, a retentive memory, method and ease in learning, and the lucidity to comprehend, and the abundance of grace in expressing myself. Guide at the beginning of my work, direct its progress, and bring it successfully to completion." This he asked in his God's name. Amen. Now I'm going to turn it over to Chaplain Shaw, who's going to make some additional welcoming comments.
Well, that was an awesome prayer. Thank you. We pray it every day up at 357. Hey, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. This is our agenda for today. If you saw the original slides, we have removed the user update, and we'll probably roll that forward to the next CCP. Chaplain Mallard was not able to be present due to an emergency. I do want to make a couple of comments. 1.3 Zulu. Isn't that wonderful nomenclature? DP 1.3 Zulu. You know, DP 1 is about the USAC's transformation. And so that broke down into 1.1. What are the functions that need to be done in a transformed center in school? And then 1.2, what is the workload that needs to get done? And then 1.3, what's the command and control structure? How will OACH change? What additional functions will migrate to the new Institute for Religious Leadership and its subordinate elements of the RSOC and also the Academy. So that was 1.3, and now, so 1.3 Zulu, that's the end of the alphabet. What does that mean? We're getting really close to briefing the Chief of Chaplains on this. So we'll brief you on where we're at. We're seeking clarity. We want to make sure that we have the right talking points for the Chaplain Corps, for commanders, and so forth. So we're getting really close on that. More to follow. Same thing on SE8. Special Effort 8, which is the Command Chaplain Alignment. We'll hear a briefing on that, rolling in everything from the last CCP Council in December. That was briefed to the Chief of Chaplains, and the 3 basic courses of action he's approved for analysis, and we'll drill into that, and it's the same thing. We want to make sure it's clear, we make sure we have the right talking points for the chaplain corps. We need to do any adjustments for clarity's sake before we actually do the analysis and then go to the Chief of Chaplains for a decision. So those are the biggest 2. However, I don't know if you can even say that, SE4, recruiting. If you don't have any water coming in from the spigot, we dry up. So Chaplain Meeker will clarify where we're at on the absolutely critical need of recruiting. So I think I'm going to truncate it at that and turn it back over to you, Chaplain Morris.
Yeah, this is the Chaplain Corps Council Purpose to Plan slide setting the conditions. This slide may be new to some folks in the room. For others, it's a reminder. And I think Chaplain Shaw's got a couple words he wants to say on this one in the next couple of
Oh, I guess I shouldn't have turned it back. I apologize. That's my sin. I need more clarity in the analysis. So, how many people are here for the very first time? Okay. Good, and all the rest of you are repeat offenders. So I give thanks to God for all of you. So obviously the most important thing is the purpose of the organization. And I'm not going to walk through all of the parts of this slide, but the Chaplain Corps is here to deliver religious support to America's soldiers. Now, that might seem obvious, but then it's, what aren't we here to do? Well, if it doesn't contribute to that, we're off mission. So that's what we need to keep front and center as we look at command chaplain alignment, as we look at OACH and IRL transformation, as we look at the whole deck. What does this align so that we can enhance the delivery of religious support to America's soldiers? And that works its way down through priorities, vision, ends, ways, means, and lines of effort. Next slide, please. On this slide, in my area here, I call your attention to 2 things. The right lower corner is your recipe for acronym soup. Follow that and you'll see what things stand for. And what this slide is about is how the CCP, the Chaplain Corps Campaign Plan, uses a certain process so that things come into play and they are actually acted on. There are 4 types of inputs: the focused objectives, strategic efforts, special topics, and decision points that are brought in. There's an assessment that goes on. OPTs are assigned as needed. Things which are needed to gain consensus are brought back to the council for review. They go to a 1-star, a meeting of our 1-stars and other strategic leaders. And then finally, the Chief of Chaplains, if it's like a decision point, will approve it, and it's integrated into HQDA processes, whatever are appropriate, and we act on it. So the purpose of it, as you see in the very middle, is so that we're communicating, so that all of our players, our ACOMs, ASCC, DRUs, our U.S. Army Chaplain Center and School, all of our special commands, and the representatives are engaged so that we can, yellow box up top, right corner, deliver focused religious support to America's soldiers through a process which drives unity of effort, so we're rowing together. It allows each of us to honor our equities from our disparate commands, build consensus, empower decision-making, and allocate resources. That last line is something we haven't done in the past. But in going forward, our Chaplain Corps campaign plan will be aligned with PALM processes for resourcing. And then finally, meet command spiritual readiness requirements through the lens of Chief Chaplain's priorities. That means that you need to represent the distinctive needs of your command. And together, we use the priorities of the Chief of Chaplain's priorities. We use that. So we have the same site picture and priority, but we apply it differently based on the commands that we're in. Any comments or questions on that? I was either completely clear or obtuse. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, then these are the rules. Again, we have about a third of us are new. This is the governance for the council, and you can read all that. I'm just going to call your attention to the right-hand side where it says move out smartly. We're getting close to the chief of chaplain's decision in a couple of very important areas. And I'll just say, command chaplain alignment, what that's going to be. So we've worked through the processes. We'll talk more about that later, but it'll be important that when our senior leader makes a decision, then we communicate that decision, the urgency of it, we empower our folks toward the results, we create quick wins, and we look for ways to adjust the culture to sustain the momentum. So we're getting close, and then you lead your team. So I just call those to your attention as well. And I think with that, unless there are any comments or questions on this slide? We're just that upper left-hand corner, just look, we're going to honor each other here. We're going to work together. We're going to respect non-attribution. That means that what you say will not be attributed to you outside this room so that you can represent your leaders in the chaplain corps. We need to be able to speak honestly, respectfully, but we can disagree. We need to bring it. We need to bring it to have a good dialogue. And then, when the decision is made, we'll move out smartly. Anybody? Okay. Sir.
Great, next one. All right, the next couple of slides are a review of the Chaplain Corps calendar. Just a reminder again that if you have something that you want to add to the Chaplain Corps calendar from your ACOM, ASCC, etc., if you funnel those through the ops email at OACH, those get reviewed and then will get placed on the calendar. So just draw your attention to a couple of items here in the calendar coming up here in the month of February. There is, of course, the Chaplain Colonel Selection Board next week. The Executive Leader Care Training and Certification coming up the week of the 11th through the 15th. Then the TRADOC Commanders Conference at USACS, the 18th through the 22nd. If there are items that you have from your commands that you want to get represented, get with myself, Sergeant Harris afterwards. We'll jot them down and make sure that you get the forms so that we can get these added to the calendar. Next slide. Here are some of the significant events for March. Just want to highlight the Religious Leader Wellness Training for Roman Catholic priests. That MOI went out last week. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to talk to me during the week here. In addition, you notice that the pastoral care folks are going out a number of times, and they are more than happy to fill up their calendar with your requests. So if you'd like to bring them to your site, please get with Chaplain Knuckles, Master Sergeant Rognes, and they'll be happy to help you out in getting that training scheduled in your area. Next slide.
Hey, Chaplain Knuckles and Master Sergeant Rognes, can you stand up so people can identify you? Oh, there they are. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Chops has just mentioned, thank you, I'm going to do it tomorrow, but Chaplain, at RLS 4, one of the things we're not really good at is having religious support for religious supporters. So Chaplain Knuckles is the RLS 4 chaplain. So he is available for pastoral care, and we need to start doing that and take care of our own. So thanks, Mark, for being willing to do that as our pastoral care team leader. Appreciate it.
Yes, you're welcome.
Then April's calendar, just want to highlight the Jewish religious support coverage that will be going on in the RCENT AOR during that period of time, highlighting that as one of the successes of the mobilization folks. So getting that support downrange during that time period. Next slide.
Hey, Chaplain Lawrence, can everybody in the entire Chaplain Corps actually see what's going on? Can
Yes,
they
sir.
see this?
Yes, sir. So everyone in the Corps has access to this. Again, when we send out the slide deck, we'll put the link for the calendar on it. It's a enterprise-wide Outlook calendar. So if you're on the Army Enterprise System, you can see this calendar. You can't add to it, but you can see it. It will let you see the information on there. And so we will send that link out again, along with the email address, when we send out the final slide deck, so that you can A, see it, and B, if you have something you want to add to it, do that. This time I'm going to turn it over to Chaplain Billy Graham, who is going to tee up and work the lead and facilitate the Army Reform Initiative Institute for Religious Leadership conversation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to make sure you're all awake after that wonderful lunch. I get the distinct pleasure of introducing a topic like Chaplain Shaw has mentioned. Anyone who has been a part of our council understands that this has been a very long process. But here we are at Zulu, at the end of the alphabet, where we can now communicate with the purpose of creating a common understanding of what this Army Reform Initiative is allowing us. It's a godsend to push us to this point where we will now explain what this Institute of Religious Leadership and what it means for our Corps. Next slide, please. Sure.
Thanks, Billy. This is the Chief of Chaplain's approved strategic religious leader icon. This is, an icon means what you aspire for. Strategic religious leaders empower a vision founded on God's call that brings religious care, love, and support to command, soldiers, civilians, and families in a complex, ambiguous, and changing environment. And as in all strategic endeavors, it's about aligning your organization relative to the environment with a vision and effecting the changes that are necessary to make a positive difference. And here we have 4 strategic leader competencies. The reason this is up there is this is the icon to which we aspire. These are the competencies we need, and so that is a guiding part so that we can actually form IRL. And I'll leave it at that. You've got this in your slide deck and you can see.
No, we don't.
No, not in the slide deck.
This is not in the slide.
It'll be in the final slide
It'll be in
deck.
the final slide deck.
As I said, it will be in the final slide deck. It was inadvertently left off, or it was at the very back of, I don't recall, I don't know the sequences.
We had it in the back.
It's in the backup currently. If you printed your slides or got a set, it's in the backup. That's what, and if it's not, then
We'll get it
we're
back
wrong.
up.
You'll get it. Thank you.
Next, go ahead.
Good job.
As a part of that, with that leadership icon in mind, the question you have to ask is why? Why all this change? Why have we committed so much time and effort to think through the transformation that's required at OCH and USACs? Well, these are the 5 drivers that we've identified that has brought us to this point. One is, and we've already talked about that, the proponency unity of effort. So we're all rowing in the same direction for the same purpose. Secondary is the training education that we, over the last couple of years, VAXOR 265-16 required the chaplain corps to kind of take a look at ourselves, and find out what are we doing, what are we doing well, what can we do better, and some of those things we've identified, and here's the outgrowth of that. Branch certification for inherently governmental military function. Those reasons and those things that why we're in a uniform, and we're going to get to this a little bit more as we do a little history lesson. Number 4 is that we operationalize our religious support so that it's integrated in a manner for the Army's spiritual readiness. And last but not least, that wonderful acronym that everybody at HQDA cringes under, that's called the Army Reform Initiative. When it first came out, it did cause us to have a little angst, but in reflection is seen as a godsend. Again, we'll explain that in a bit. In our next slide, we're going to do a little history lesson to kind of describe how we got to these 5 drivers. And you can't start a history lesson with the Chaplain Corps unless you go all the way back to 1775, which was the time in which we were established as the Chaplain Corps, as an inherently governmental military organization, meaning that we were in uniform, a part of the Army to provide religious support to the force, unlike the other special branches. We're unique in that capacity. Along with that, moving along, that's not up here, in the 1800s was added the responsibility of moral leadership. And it was initially instituted at that little institute on the Hudson River called the Military Academy at West Point, where we added that moral leadership responsibility to our plate. Following along a little further, in 1918, we finally have our first chaplain school established at Fort Monroe, and there was a secondary one that was actually stood up in France. That was our first 2 schools, and then 14 moves later, it finally settled. I know that caused a few chuckles. We're finally settled at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, where many of you all hail from, and you're up here freezing to death. I understand that. But here we are, and that all started in 1918. Now, after that Great War, in 1920, the United States Army recognized that there was something about the Chaplain Corps that required something extra. That was to establish a chief of chaplains that has the responsibility of being the leadership for those proponent responsibilities, the religious proponent responsibilities. That individual was also given the responsibility to communicate with the endorsers that provided the chaplains to the force, so that it would provide for the free exercise of religion across the whole Army. It also kept the Army away from the mindset or the temptation, I guess, of establishing any kind of religion, because they were the representative, our representative, within the force. A wide spectrum, different backgrounds, providing religious support to the force. It also provided a strategic environment, meaning now that we have someone in the headquarters, HQDA, at the strategic level, the Army recognized that we needed that kind of input when it comes to religious issues that can address it at that level, and has retained that ever since 1920. Now, as we move along, we've got to 1945, again after another horrible war. There was an understanding that the Army Chaplain Corps was still lacking. We were lacking in that we needed a FOA to try to address again some of the disconnects in our proponent unity of effort. That's why that little line is out there in the box. That was one of the things that it was supposed to address. The other part was to ensure that we had that proponent training that's supposed to be accomplished. Matter of fact, just so you know, that once upon a time, at least during the Vietnam era, 1964 to 1973, our current C4 course, the advanced course, was 9 months long. Just soak in that for a moment. We'll leave that alone. Just kind of something that was attempt to address some of those issues and challenges during that time. Now, there was kind of a pendulum swing in trying again, making sure that we have our training set and that we were doing the things as we need to as a branch to provide religious support to our force, is that our chaplain center in school was brought into TRADOC. Again, unlike the other special branches, we wholeheartedly went into TRADOC because of their systems that they have in place and their standards for training. Wholeheartedly. We got in, full force. Again, unlike medical, unlike JAG, who kind of stayed out of that. But as we moved along, we recognized that it didn't quite answer our need for proponent unity of effort. TRADOC gave us, again, those systems and standards so that our education and our training was happening fantastically. However, there was things that's going on in HQDA that created a bifurcation of providing this operational religious support to the force. That splitting, if you will, is kind of one of those driving things to guide us to where we are. Separately, they're both doing fantastic things, but it may not be fulfilling what we needed to do as a joint unity of effort, providing that religious support that our soldiers expect, which drove us all the way down to recently in 2016. Again, that exhort that we put out to kind of take a look at things, to evaluate where are we, what are we doing, can we do it better? That was an attempt to realign our chaplain corps for improved readiness as we're looking at Force 2025 and beyond, which is right around the corner. It's here. Maybe that's in my mind because I'm supposed to be FUOPs, thinking 2025 as if it's today. That was just extra credit, sir. Now, again, the bane of our existence in a building happened just this last September when the Secretary of the Army kind of dropped a lead bomb in the building, in which he said, if it is operational in any way, it doesn't belong in the building. You need to divest all those operational things to a lower command. Now, as we evaluated things, where can the Chief of Chaplains divest proponent responsibilities to a lower command? Exactly. You can't. Because they are Chief of Chaplains proponent responsibilities that you can't give anywhere else. That became one of the driving forces in us thinking, how do we still fulfill the requirement that we have? Well, as you see, from October, the last 4 months now, it seems like 6 years, we have been striving, looking, analyzing, thinking until I have a headache on how can we achieve this. And that's when we came up with, or at least looked at, the idea of developing, once again, establishing a FOA, Field Operating Agency, that the operational capacities of religious support can be divested to so that those things can still happen, that they are integrated now in with the education and training that is already happening at USACs. And so that as an institute, now we have that unity of effort, proponent unity of effort going in one direction to fulfill everything that is required of us from the Army. And with your prayers and lots of grace, this October, 1 October 2019, yes, read that, we are hoping to stand up that FOA, at least the IOC of it, and 1 year later, fully operationally having that FOA and Academy, which I will introduce next. There's our history in a nutshell. Next slide. Now, what is this institute going to look like? And it is the U.S. Army Institute for Religious Leadership, meaning it is an Army institute. It just so happens that it is